Have you been told that pastel colors look great on you, so you start shopping for more similar shades of pastels, but for some reason, only certain colors seem to work? Or maybe you're like me, where all your life you thought that pastel colors are not your colors, but certain types of pastels somehow look much better. If you're a regular viewer on my channel, you probably already know where I'm going with this. In today's video, we're going to talk about the differences between light and soft seasons. Now, I know if you have some knowledge about color analysis, you already know what the difference is between light colors and soft colors. But today I want to talk a little more in depth and in detail about what kind of relationship exists between the two groups, why differentiating them is so important, and in true fashion of my color-related content, we'll also talk about some of the indicators that you can look out for in determining whether you belong to one of these seasons. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jen, and this channel is all about taking logical and practical steps in finding your personal style, from color analysis to facial proportions to fashion and lifestyle tips. If that's something you're into as well, please click on those like and subscribe buttons, and welcome to the channel. Alright, so we're continuing the series on color analysis deep dives to talk about light and soft seasons today. There's two reasons why I've grouped these two together. The first reason is because, like I talked about in the intro, we often use the umbrella term pastels to group any sort of diluted, pale, subtle colors that belong to both the light and soft families. And if you have knowledge about color analysis, you know that there's a difference between light and soft colors. Which brings me to my second reason for grouping these two types into one video, and that is we either group light and soft colors into the umbrella term pastel, or we tend to think that the two are completely separate from one another because of where these seasons are located within the wheel of the seasonal color system. So on the wheel of the 12 color seasons, light spring and light summer are on the far right side of the wheel, whereas the soft seasons, soft autumn and soft summer, are on the bottom. And in my previous videos, I've always talked about how the color season wheel shouldn't really be viewed as distinct groups of colors, but rather as a spectrum. So depending on where exactly you sit on the spectrum of the color seasons, you might be able to borrow some colors from your adjacent seasons. For example, if you sit close to the middle of the spectrum between light spring and light summer, that means you're not really sensitive to the temperature of colors, and you might be able to wear colors from both seasons. For you, the dominant characteristic that you should focus on in determining your best colors is how light or how high in value the colors are. On the other hand, if you're a light summer that falls closer to true summer, then lightness of colors is still the dominant trait that you should focus on, but you're also more sensitive to the temperature of colors as well. So you might want to avoid light spring colors that are on the warmer side, but instead you'd be able to borrow some cooler and slightly deeper colors from the true summer palette. Now, because of the way the color seasons are laid out in this wheel, being able to borrow colors from adjacent seasons is a relatively easy concept to understand. The issue is, when we say adjacent seasons, we only tend to focus on seasons that are immediately on either side of the given season. But what about the relationship between light and soft colors? If we think about it, light colors are created by adding white to a pure color, whereas soft colors are created by adding gray. But gray is a mix of white and black, so technically, if this light green is created by adding only white to a bright green, then if we add a small drop of black to this light green, it'll become slightly darker and also softer. So in that sense, light and soft colors are also on a spectrum depending on how much black is added to the color. Now, with summer palettes, looking at the transition from light summer to soft summer colors appears relatively smooth because true summer is in between. And all these three subseasons share the common denominator of having summer as their home season, so the colors in these palettes all share the same quality of being cool and muted. So if we place the three color palettes next to each other, the transition from one to the next, like I said, is quite smooth, right? Even if we remove the true summer palette from the middle, the differences between light summer and soft summer colors aren't all that drastic. But what if we place light spring and soft autumn palettes next to each other? We can see here that apart from the top two rows of neutral colors, there's a pretty significant gap between these two palettes, and the transition is not nearly as smooth as light summer to soft summer colors. This is exactly why subseasons like soft spring or light autumn are added to the seasonal color system as it gets expanded into more than 12 subseasons. It's because how the colors are grouped into 12 doesn't represent the nuances of certain colors or color groups within the spectrums of temperature, value, and clarity. Now, clarity especially is such an important characteristic to consider because it determines how eye-catching the color can appear. This is similar but also a little bit different from describing the saturation or the intensity of colors, because the concept of clarity can also be applied to light colors that contain white. White is a very eye-catching color. I mean, it's technically not a color, but you know what I mean. White is very stark and bright to look at, which is why it catches our eyes. It's also why a bright, pure white is considered a high contrast color that's suitable for the winter seasons. If you remember from my last video about the true cool seasons, I used these specific images to explain how a pure white is a better option for somebody in a winter season than this pastel, cool, purplish pink because of the high contrast that the white creates against the skin. It's because the brightness of the white is extremely eye-catching that it creates a stark contrast against the skin, and this is regardless of how light your skin tone is, because your skin will never be as light as a pure white. Now, what that means in terms of adding white to a color is that even if a pure color becomes more diluted by adding white, there is still a level of that attention-grabbing tendency in the color despite it being diluted. If we go back to these three different greens, for example, between the first two, the bright green is obviously more eye-catching because of its intensity or saturation, and the lighter green in the middle that only contains white is less eye-catching than the bright green. But when we compare it to the third color, which includes both white and black, can you see how that eye-catching quality is far more present in the middle color? So in describing these three colors, we would say that the first color is bright and clear, the second color is light and clear, and the third color is light and soft. Now, why is this important for color analysis? Color analysis is all about finding colors that work the most harmoniously with your natural coloring. So if the color that I'm wearing is too high in clarity for me, then the color is going to draw more attention than my face does, and the viewer's eye will go straight to the color first, not to my face. So whether you're in a soft or a light season, if you've ever felt like you can wear pastels but certain colors seem to appear more separated from the skin and the color jumps out more, then that might be an indicator that the clarity level of that specific color is too high for you. On the other hand, if a certain pastel appears too dull and makes you look more tired or gray, that can mean that the clarity of the color is too low for your own coloring. And because, like we said, light and soft colors can be on a spectrum depending on how much black is added to the light color, that point of balance or the range of lightness or softness that works for you will depend on your own coloring. But in terms of grouping these ranges into different seasons, separating the whole spectrum only into soft autumn and light spring might create a bit of a disconnect in the spectrum of colors, like we saw with comparing the two color palettes. So if you've been typed as a light spring but the clear pastels appear to jump out too much, or if you've been typed as a soft autumn but the soft pastels appear too dull and heavy on you, these might be clues that you're somewhere in between the two, and your best colors might actually be closer to what would be categorized as soft spring or light autumn palettes. Now that we've established what the relationship is between light and soft colors and why it's important to distinguish between the two, let's talk about the similarities and differences between the two categories and what kind of indicators we can use as clues in figuring out which exact subseason you might fall closer to. First, if we were to talk about some common elements between the light and soft families, we can start with talking about the contrast level. Like I've said before, clarity and value, and more specifically, high clarity and low value or depth of colors, these are the two major indicators that determine your overall contrast level and the contrast level in the colors that are the most suitable for you. That's exactly why all winter seasons are known to have high contrast, either through clarity or through depth. Now that means light and soft are the opposite, right? So these are the categories that are associated with lower contrast levels. Between light and soft seasons have lower contrast because, like we talked about earlier, white and colors that contain white are still higher in clarity than soft colors. So soft or low clarity means low contrast level in general, but in the naming conventions of the subseasons, what comes after the word soft can also be used as a clue to indicate how low of a contrast level you need. For example, in the 12 season system, soft autumn and soft summer would both be low contrast because these palettes contain colors that are the most muted or the lowest in clarity. But outside of the 12 season system, there's also subseasons like soft winter and soft spring. And with soft winter, its home season is still winter, right? And either through clarity or through depth, winters always have the highest level of contrast in their color palettes. So a soft winter palette would be like a step down from that, but colors in this palette palette wouldn't be as soft or muted as the soft summer or soft autumn palettes. And similarly with soft spring, contrast level in spring seasons can vary quite a bit, but overall the contrast for spring colors is not as high as winter. So again, a soft spring palette would be like a step down from that, so like medium, medium-low, but not as low as soft summer or soft autumn palettes because the clarity level for both winter and spring are still higher than summer and autumn. And if we make the connection between contrast to patterns, patterns have a tendency to lower the contrast because they break up a solid color. And the more intricate and delicate the patterns are, the more broken up the colors become and the lower the contrast level as well, which means with pattern suggestions for soft autumn and soft summer, you'll notice they're usually smaller, more detailed, and less contrasted in shapes or in the color differences. Especially with the soft autumn palette, I feel like there is such a strong association between the soft autumn colors and the boho style of patterns that are very intricate. So if you're a soft autumn, you probably have quite a wide range of options and patterns to choose from in terms of what's available out there. And because light and soft are both on the opposite ends of clear and deep, colors that create a high level of contrast, so colors that are very bright or very dark, for both light and soft seasons, the harshness of the high contrast created by these colors doesn't match the contrast levels found in their natural coloring. So on these types, very bright or deep colors can be quite overpowering. In terms of differentiating between light and soft seasons, obviously draping is the most accurate way of finding out, but with light seasons, lightness is the dominant trait, and that's often very evident in the skin tones. It doesn't mean that you can only be a certain ethnicity with a very light hair color or with certain eye colors, etc. But in terms of the skin depth, if we were to arrange the different ranges of the skin tones found in each ethnic group, there's a higher chance for people with lighter skin tones within those ranges to belong to light seasons. There's also some information out there that says the eye color is usually also lighter than average, but I think that can really depend on the person. Now with soft seasons, or for those whose dominant trait is low clarity and softness, examining the softness found in the color of the hair and the eyes is important, but looking at the texture and the natural clarity level in the hair and the skin is also important. I've brought this up a few times in previous videos that clarity level when it comes to the skin is associated with the natural glow that the skin has. And it's like comparing having a direct versus an indirect light shining on your features as a way to differentiate between high and low clarity levels. So having an overall matte quality in the skin and hair texture can be some hints that colors with low clarity would work more harmoniously with your own features. Now, in terms of understanding which colors between light and soft seasons are more suitable for you, there's obviously the visual indicators that we've just talked about. But there's also the psychological effects that these groups of colors can have because our brains subconsciously associate certain emotional and characteristic attributes to the different qualities of colors. Adding white or adding white and black both dilute the colors and neutralize the temperature of the colors as well. So the attributes we talked about in previous videos with the 4 true seasons, those attributes and characteristics are also somewhat neutralized or diminished. But there's also some additional feelings or characteristics that we associate with the qualities of light and soft. With light colors, the feeling that the clear pastel colors bring is more delicate and a little more youthful, whereas with colors that contain more gray, as the colors become more toned down with the added black, there's a bit more softness, maturity, and elegance associated with the muted quality of the colors. Think about baby products or products for children. A lot of them use clear pastel colors that contain white but not black. Whereas with more toned down, muted colors, these are often colors found in interior design, a lot of luxury products, etc. So they give more of a sophisticated and a mature feel as opposed to the purity and the innocence of the colors found in the light seasons. If you're having a hard time associating these characteristic attributes to what appears more harmonious with your overall image or the inherent impression that you as a person have, think about the positive and the negative feelings associated with the two color families. On the positive side, light colors can appear pure and innocent, delicate, uplifting, but on the negative side, they can also appear childish, pale, or powerless. Similarly, with soft colors, the positive word associations include elegance, gracefulness, sophistication, and serenity, but on the negative side, they can make you look tired or gray, unnecessarily mature or old, and lifeless or even boring. If the colors or the color season suits you as a person, not only would the visual effects of wearing those colors appear flattering on your overall appearance, but also with the psychological attributes, the positive associations that we make with certain color groups would be amplified. And if the colors don't suit you, obviously you'll see noticeable negative effects on your appearance and a separation between you and the color, but also the negative associations we just listed can be amplified as well. So depending on how the colors make you look and whether they bring out the positive or the negative attributes associated with these colors, that can also be something that you can use as a clue in understanding your dominant trait. For me, I really don't wear light colors or clear pastels. They have this weird effect of making me look really pale, but also darker at the same time, and there's definitely a separation between me and the color, and they also make me look quite childish, like I've borrowed clothes from somebody 20 years younger than me. Similarly, if colors in soft seasons are not a match for you, the colors might have the effect of making you look tired or older, so that likely means that soft colors with a lot of gray are probably not your colors. So with a lot of information on color analysis out there, the majority of the focus is on the visual effects that colors can have on your overall appearance. But I think it's also important to remember that if colors are really working in harmony with you, then they should also bring out the positive emotions or characteristics that we typically associate with those colors. Now, in terms of figuring out which exact light or soft season you're in, we've talked about the attributes associated with the qualities of light and soft, but there's also the associations that our minds make with the 4 seasons of the year as well, which we've covered in the previous True Seasons videos. So connecting the dots between the dominant trait and the season can also provide additional guidance on which colors represent you the best. For example, light spring colors, because they're light but they also lean warm, and spring is associated with a fresh and youthful feeling, the delicate and pure feeling of the light colors combined with the freshness of the spring can really amplify that innocent and uplifting energy. Whereas with light summer colors are associated with feelings of tranquility and softness. So combined with the delicate feel of the light colors, the images we associate with the light summer palette can be highly feminine and dainty. Or with soft summer, the tranquility of the summer energy combined with the sophistication and the serenity of the soft quality can really enhance and amplify that elegant and graceful image of the colors. So if you figured out that you're one of the light seasons, but you're not really sure which one, thinking about the characteristics associated with the seasons might also be helpful. And this is exactly why I wanted to cover the true seasons earlier on in the series, because I think it's important to understand the attributes that we subconsciously associate with the 4 seasons of the year and how they relate to the seasonal color system as the 4 seasons are merged with the other dominant traits of colors. With color analysis, there's the seasonal system and there's also the tonal system. And I think the benefit of the tonal system is that there's more emphasis placed on figuring out what your dominant trait is, and we're not always putting heavy focus on undertones. But the seasonal system also has its own benefits in that it's easier for a lot of us to make mental associations between the attributes and the colors tied to each of the 4 seasons. So combining the benefits of the 2 systems, I think, is a really good way to understand how color analysis can work in harmony with you as a person on top of the visual effects that different colors can have on your appearance. I hope you found the video helpful, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to press those like and subscribe buttons before you go. I'll see you in my next video, and until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.